Well, but I think it's also important to note that, some of the toolkit features that they've rolled out are definitely there to kind of say, hey, and if you get these metrics to a good value, you'll be getting more rewards. So they're saying, if you produce high quality skills, we will reward you.
Right.
We will reward you for making high quality skills. And that, I think, money goes a long way for people to make high quality skills.
Hello, VoiceBot Nation. We are back with another special episode. This time, the spotlight is on Amazon and the Alexa Live Show. And to talk about this, I have some special guests that we had here just a few weeks ago. First up, Mark Tucker. Mark, hello.
Hey, Brett.
Good to see you. And then we have the indomitable Ellen Furstenberg.
Hey, Brett.
And my colleague, Eric Schwartz from VoiceBot. Hey, Eric.
Hi. Hi there.
Okay, so I think people probably know you from a couple of weeks ago because we were just together for the momentous news about all the things that our friends over at Google are doing for the voice developer ecosystem, which includes stepping back from the voice developer ecosystem. You guys can all go look at that. It's on YouTube and on the podcast. But what we should do is why don't you guys just do a brief intro? Because we got a lot to talk about today, but they should know who you are. Mark Tucker, go for it.
Senior Technical Director at Rain Agency. And I've been doing Alexa skill development since 2017. And Alexa Champion, do Google Assistant and do Custom Assistant work as well. Plus, I contribute to the open source community and am one of the 2 voice devs.
You are one of the 2 voice devs. Geez, you got started late, not till 2017. I thought you would have been earlier than that.
Yeah, I started looking at it in 2016, but
okay. We want to get you,
but that was still two years after it started. So
I know it's definitely early. Hey, Ellen Furstenberg.
I'm Alan. I am a project manager at Objective Consulting. I'm also a Google developer expert for the Google Assistant and a pile of other stuff. I have been doing voice development now since the Google Assistant first came out. And mostly a lot of what I do is helping people understand how to do it, helping out on Stack Overflow, answering questions there. And I am the other half of 2 voice devs.
Okay, so we should just say, what is 2 voice devs? Tell people, raise some awareness here.
2 Voice Devs is a podcast and a YouTube series that we have now done for 2 years. We release it every week, and a lot of what we do is discuss voice from a developer's point of view. And we started out by kind of saying, I'm Alexa and I'm the Google Assistant, and here's how we compare and contrast developing for those 2 platforms. And over the years that we've been doing it now, it's kind of evolved into what do every developer need when we do voice development? How do we make the voice development platform better for everybody across platforms, Google and Amazon and custom assistants and wherever they're coming out, and just kind of exploring what it takes to be a developer in the voice first world.
Perfect. All right. So check that out. 2 voice devs on your favorite podcast network and on YouTube, even if that's not your favorite video network. Okay, Eric Hal Schwartz.
So the head writer for VoiceBot.ai. So covering the stories of everything going on in voice and including all the exciting news that has been rolling out from various conferences this year, like the one we're talking about today.
All right, perfect. And I'm Brett Kinsella. I am the founder and editor of VoiceBot.ai, VoiceBot Research, all the other good things. And really fun to talk about Alexa Live once again. So Alexa Live, what is it? It is the developer event for Alexa. And they're going to have a product event, or they always have a product event in September. I assume they'll do that again this year. And so that's where a lot of the fancy things come out. That's where we see things like a new robot or the Dick Tracy ring that you could talk into that's since been canceled. So this is really much more the nitty gritty. It's like, what is there for the developers? What can they do? You get to talk about the capabilities of the marketplace. And we actually see a lot of the things around their messaging, because they're trying to communicate, I think, to the developer community and to the media who's there about like how they think about this space. It's like a setup in some ways for their product launch and what they think is important at that time. So I thought we would start out by saying, hey, from that setup and positioning standpoint, Alan, they decided that they're doing Google Glass for smart speakers.
They are. It's kind of funny when Google first announced the Assistant a bunch of years back. I had somebody ask me, "What did I think about it?" And I said, "Well, it's Google Glass, the next generation." And they kind of looked at me weird. But I pointed out that when Glass launched, and literally launched, the messaging behind it was Glass was technology that was there when you needed it, but out of the way when you don't. And literally 1 minute into Alexa Live,
Yes.
they said those exact words.
You know what? It's amazing to me. Everybody is copying Google's marketing.
Except for Google.
Exactly. Like they abandoned it. I will say that like they're really good at those things. Like you just said, it's like organizing the world's information, right? How many times have I heard some variant on that of some new startup who's just like, it's like really good. And I think when they first started talking about Assistant, it was like, basically it helps you get things done. And
in your world. The key phrase was Assistant helps you get things done in your world. And that was emphasizing the fact that, this isn't a computer. You're not inside a computer. It's not a virtual world. It's with the stuff that's around you. And that's exactly the point that Alexa was trying to bring home with their ambient intelligence.
Ambient intelligence, which is very interesting too. Eric and I had a chance to talk to a couple of folks at Amazon before the Alexa Live event, and they brought this up and they said ambient intelligence. I said, you used to talk about ambient computing. Why are you saying ambient intelligence? And they didn't even it didn't even register that they'd changed the terminology. I'm not, so they didn't really have a good answer to it. I asked it. I think I'm the only one who's asked this, but I think there is a reason. I think it came from the marketing department, and ambient computing was about much more the execution of tasks. And ambient intelligence takes that a different direction. And we heard a lot more about it knowing things about you or assisting you proactively. And so in order for it to do that, it needs to be intelligence. Computing doesn't necessarily get you there.
That's a good point. Yeah.
That's about all they said too, Mark.
Yeah.
I find it interesting that they didn't even try to play up the fact that it's a different, acronym for AI, that they're trying to play this as a more humane AI. It's not artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
It's ambient. It's humane. It's a human oriented intelligence, which is an interesting way to look at it.
Man, they're going to hire you as a marketing consultant. Who would have never thought? All right. So that was a setup. That was sort of fun just to take a trip down memory lane with Google Glass and their messaging. I think it is a little bit important the way they talk about things, because it gives you a sense of what they think is important and maybe what's guiding them. Because everything they do is, if they have this top level messaging, everything that they roll out, they have to say, oh, this is how it fits into that. So I'm going to go with the first story. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about developers, but I want to talk about the multi-assistant Alexa. So the first thing I should do, by the way, everybody, there's a very cool YouTube video that you'll be able to see where I actually broke down a video of Alexa working with these other smart speakers and these other assistants side by side, and do some commentary on that. And one of the things we talk about is this isn't entirely new, right? So Facebook Portal was the first out, although our friends at Deutsche Telekom say Magenta was the first one. Portal beat them by a little bit, but they had Portal by Facebook and Alexa both available with wake words. And then they had Magenta, Hey Magenta in Germany, and then Alexa. Okay, great. So but those have been around for a couple of years, actually more than 2 years now, almost 3. So I thought it was really interesting. We haven't really heard anything of this other than the Voice Interoperability Initiative from 2019, almost exactly 3 years ago.
Right.
3 years ago next month, I think, or the month after. And we saw some very specific manifestation of that. What did you make of it, Mark?
Well, one of the things that's interesting to me is in some ways, it's interesting that Amazon's kind of on the forefront of this, and they're like, well, why would you want some other assistant, paired up in the same, hardware as your Alexa? But I can also see in some ways that even in other countries in Europe, they're even talking about, well, you have to, if you've got a voice assistant, you're going to have to make it so you can choose which assistant is on the hardware. So I think Amazon's just trying to find a way to make sure that Alexa is one of those. And if Alexa is one of those, then provide the different information that users will need to incentivize that they want to use Alexa maybe over some of these other ones. But I could see, in a household in different situations, you might want to connect with different assistants because there might be a specialty. Just like in real life, you have an assistant that maybe specializes in keeping your calendaring and scheduling working, but somebody else might be an assistant in more of your personalized or your fashion choices. I don't know, whatever it is, assistants. Yeah. That it does make sense that you could have multiple assistants in your home.
So, one of the things one of the things they showed, they had a little video that they showed. So it wasn't like a live demonstration, but it indicates that it either works today or they have a high confidence that it's going to work, is that they had a Sonos device with Alexa and Sonos. They had a Samsung device, which we can talk about, with both Bixby and Alexa. That's news, I think. They had an LG device with whatever LG's assistant is, and Alexa. And then they had just the Amazon on its own. What they didn't have in that demonstration, or at least in that video, is they didn't have another voice assistant on an Alexa device. Now we are seeing that with Disney, so that's a little bit different. But I thought that was very interesting. What did you make of it, Eric?
Yeah, I think the choices were interesting. I was a little surprised, honestly, to see Sonos there because even though Sonos officially has lawsuits going on with Google, they have also complained about Amazon using their patents. So I was a little surprised they were willing to be that openly friendly. But I think it sort of is indicative of the way it's like what you're saying for. It's about how Amazon wants people to think about Alexa, and they want people to think about Alexa as available on whatever device you use. If you're an audiophile who loves Sonos devices, if you're, someone who just can't use anything except the Galaxy phone, they want it to be that regardless of the hardware or other technology you're using, you're still part of the Alexa family, or you're still integrating it into your daily life, and the technical the technical abilities aside, that's pretty clear that that's how they are pitching Alexa to developers and to customers.
What do you think, Alan?
I think the Sonos presentation was one of the many, many interesting and underhanded digs at Google.
Absolutely.
It was one of those, if you didn't know what was going on with Google, if you don't even know the details of the case between Sonos and Google, it went right past you. But if you did know what the arguments, the very specific, in some cases, patents that are being argued about, that's like the command that they use to give as an example. So it was a very, very direct shot across the bow there, which I thought was interesting. I think what my recurring concern about multiple assistants, aside from trying to argue with what is an assistant and why do we care, is one that it sounds like they're trying to address with this notion of being able to issue a command with one assistant and have a different assistant actually handle it. And that kind of goes to my do you need to remember which assistant can do what? And I think what Amazon is slowly starting to say is, no, you won't need to do that. You'll be able to ask Alexa for anything. And if Alexa can't handle it, we will have this magic setup behind the scenes that we are coordinating out of the goodness of our heart for all of the other assistant developers to be able to hand it off to the right assistant. So I thought that was, they're starting to address that issue, which I think is really the core of what multi-assistant coordination will be all about.
Mhm.
Well, it's kind of interesting because like if I invoke Alexa and ask something that is handled by another assistant and there's a handoff, then I can assume that if I asked for Bixby and it wasn't something that Bixby could handle, then they would hand it off to somebody else. That leads to well, maybe I don't want any of them to be my primary assistant. Maybe I give a specific name to an assistant that I care about. My Jarvis. I want my Jarvis's voice, and I ask Jarvis for everything. And maybe Jarvis can't do anything other than hand it off to one of these other assistants.
Right, and I think that goes to the question of what do we mean when we say we have an assistant?
Yeah.
Right now we think of an assistant as the voice and the personality and the coordinate, the controlling system that's coming out of the speaker. Is that what it's going to be in the future?
But what we're talking about is not what we have. So the universal commands, what are they called? Universal commands or universal device?
Universal device commands.
Yeah, UDC. So universal device commands, if people didn't see it, for example, if you have Alexa start a timer for you, and then you're in a room and it's like you're talking to Sonos, and you can say, hey, Sonos, turn off the timer, right? So there's a few of these. It's not going to be, they're talking about a very narrow set of commands, which are for daily utilities. And what we saw was absolutely not that. What we saw was simultaneous active assistance with simultaneously active wake words. So it's not this idea of an arbitrator that has a voice assistant that can then figure out what assistant is best positioned to answer the request. That exists. That's something Cerence built for the car. It's not, I don't think anyone's implemented it yet, but I think that's what's going to happen in the car ultimately. And I don't see any trajectory towards that in the home.
Well, I think that's exactly what it is in the home, though. You say a very limited set of commands, and yet those commands will inevitably be things like media control, timers,
Yes,
and weather, which are, you know better than anyone. What are the top 3 things people ask their assistants for?
it's a pretty good list.
Yeah, and I think that's what Alexa is aiming to do, is say, okay, what will cover 95% of what people talk to their assistants for, and those will be the universal commands.
Well, do you think there's going to be one assistant to rule them all? From a consumer standpoint,
I think Amazon thinks that. Yes.
no, I don't think so. I don't get that at all. So I think they're looking at it more like an app model, and they just want to be the most popular app in the app model, and like every voice assistant's an app. And that's the way I think. I've just come to this conclusion that's the way it's going to come. That's going to way to happen. I understand this idea of having a single assistant that can do everything for you, or can reach into other web services, which may be other assistants or other functions. But it's just not the way it's playing out. People know that Sonos is going to do their music. They know that Alexa is going to do their weather.
But are people going to remember that Sonos only does their music on the Sonos speakers? And if I'm sitting in a room that doesn't have a Sonos speaker but has an Echo device, that I need to say Alexa, not Sonos? Or are people going to get irritated by that? And eventually everything's going to be Alexa.
It's not going to be a problem for them. Humans are so good at this, right? And they might even misspeak for a second, and then be like, "Oh yeah," and then they'll just fix it. I just don't think it's going to. And if it really irritates them, they'll just put a Sonos speaker in that room and get rid of the Alexa speaker.
True, although I think if Amazon can make Alexa sort of the the big tent, where it's sort of like how just in casual conversation, when people talk about voice assistants, they'll use Alexa as a generic term. I think Amazon would be fine if that applied to how people actually talk to their smart devices, so that whether it's a Sonos device or an Echo or whatever it is, if they can work with the companies to have Alexa there, even if the only role Alexa plays is to be alerted by the wake word and then immediately pass off the command. I think Amazon would find that would be very happy with that outcome as an option.
Because they're going to get the lion's share of the everyday stuff, which is what they want. And I think, Mark, you made this good point about what's going on in Europe as well from a regulatory standpoint. So we should consider that as well. But in general, what we're talking about is assistants that are on the same level. They have equal access to be the front door. And there was another announcement with Skullcandy and Native Voice, which is basically designed to bypass whatever the native assistant is, and so that any brand ultimately can be the Hey brand and be activated and not have to go through a gatekeeper like Siri, like Google Assistant, or like Amazon was with its initial multi-assistant implementation with Cortana, which was kind of a ridiculous UX disaster.
Yeah, and it's interesting with Native Voice, and it's kind of a mix, because what they consider assistant would be something that I would consider a full-blown assistant like Alexa, and in some cases it's a very purpose-built app. It's this music provider, and so what Native Voice is considering an assistant kind of runs the gambit there.
Yeah, like Hey Duncan or something like that. It might be like for Dunkin' Donuts or something like that.
Well, I think that's going to start being the question: is at what point are brands going to want to say, look, we're going to have our own assistant and we want it at the top level of every speaker that's out there. And we've now pushed everything up a level and not really solved any problems.
I don't know, but I think they all want that.
I do think they all want that. And I think that's what we're going to get. And I don't think it'll solve any user problems.
I don't what user problems are you trying to solve other than they can't access those things now?
Well, but what's the difference of me saying, Alexa, talk to Dunkin' Donuts, or Alexa, order a donut from Dunkin' Donuts, versus saying, hey, Dunkin', order a donut?
Well, first of all, I think what's going to happen is that the brand is going to control the user experience end to end then, and they will probably at least have access to the data and might own all the data.
Well, I guess it depends, right? If they're doing Alexa Custom Assistant, then it's still really Alexa behind the scenes. It's
also another good point. Yeah. So what do you do with Alexa Custom Assistant?
Although not a great example, since I don't know if you remember, Brett, we were looking into trying to figure out what happened to the Dunkin' Alexa app that seemed to vanish after a lot of hoopla about its announcement.
Yeah, maybe it's headed down towards Hey Duncan. You may have heard that here first.
Fine, let's take Red Bull then, because we know Red Bull is still a skill that's out there. So what's going to be the difference between saying, Alexa, ask Red Bull to play a soccer video, versus, hey, Red Bull, play a soccer video?
Actually, there doesn't have to be any difference. It would just be a convenience for the user.
Is it a convenience? I guess, is it a convenience for the user is what I'm saying. Well, I don't know that it is. I don't know that it's not either, but
do you issue commands to your voice assistant the exact same syntax every single time?
I don't.
Yeah, you can't. It's like impossible.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certain types of command, like turn on the TV. I guess you could probably get correct every time, but I think it's sometimes the way the mind works, that might be a way you do that. And I think the brands want it because they want to be on that level playing field. They want to be in the front room. They don't want to be in the back room.
Right.
So the thing I think is going to be best about that is if they just believe they have access to the front room, that they're more likely to invest and build something that's really innovative, even if 90% of the time they're accessed from the back room, but they could have been accessed from the front room.
Well, and I think maybe it's not, they might be, invest in making a good experience, but they also might invest in making, in the marketing dollars or whatever it is to make it sticky for users. So they're like, like, hey Duncan, what's the special today? Or, something like that.
And that would
Right.
make more sense. Like, hey Alexa, what's the special at Dunkin' Donuts today? Like, hey Dunkin', what's the special today? I like that. I will say just one other thing too. What we didn't see any integration for voice assistants from Google or Apple, and I wouldn't expect to see anything for a long time. Although I do think it would actually be smart for Apple to do that, but that's I just don't expect to see that. And what else? Oh, the other thing that they did actually show in one of the breakouts is there was this sort of long segment on Disney. And so the interesting thing, and I may have missed this, so Eric, you tell me about this, but so they're going to have it in the hotel rooms. They've had this smart display, Hey Disney, and you can say, Hey Alexa, if you want the weather, for example. They are also going to have some sort of Alexa expansion pack, which you will have to pay for, to have Hey Disney on your Amazon device. So that was one of the things we didn't see in terms of the demonstration up front, where they were talking about all the VII, voice interoperability initiative stuff. But actually, that's pretty interesting. You've got this third party. It's not a voice assistant competitor. I would consider it a voice assistant complementer in this case. But yeah, you're going to be able to go Hey Disney, and it'll be a Disney experience within the Alexa device ecosystem.
Well, and something that I noticed, if it's really is just an Echo show behind the scenes, I did notice that all the different screens that were going across instead of the typical slideshow that you get from Amazon were custom branded for Disney.
Didn't they look nicer?
They did.
Yeah.
I'm guessing that wasn't built with APL. Is that what I should assume?
I don't. It could be. It just could be that they've got
a feature that you don't.
Yeah.
Fair enough. Okay, we've hammered that one probably longer than I was planning, but it was fun. All right, so let's talk about developers. There were a lot of announcements for developers, and that was really what we expected most of it to be around. There's a little bit of showcase, but it's mostly for developers. So the first thing that I want to bring up is Amazon likes to tout now that they have 1 million developers on Alexa. What does that number mean?
Yeah, I don't know. Is that because how can you tell how many developers work on a particular skill? So, I'm not sure what that number means.
That number actually sounds suspiciously close to the same number of skills that they were quoting, I thought.
Well,
no, 100,000 skills.
It was 100,000.
So they say more than 100,000 skills is what they say.
So I guess
1 million developers on 100,000 skills.
Yeah.
But it might be 200,000. They just say it's more than 100,000.
Yeah.
Then they've said that for 3 years.
I think they can figure it out though, because even if you have a skill and then there's multiple developers working on it, and then you assign multiple developers to that project, but in order to do that, you have to you have to have created an Alexa developer console account. So I'm assuming they're just counting how many people have created.
Oh, it's registered devs. It's got to be, right?
Yeah.
No. I'm now increasingly concerned. If they're saying there are 1 million skills,
they didn't say that.
100,000 skills, or
more than 100,000,
up to 200,000 skills.
No,
but 1 million developers.
No, 500,000 skills is more than 100,000.
Fine, either way. I can do the math. It sounds like there are more developers than skills.
Oh yes, absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, if you count everyone working at Disney on it as a developer, then it's probably quite a lot.
Yeah, and I know this developer has created probably at least 20 or 30 skills.
Well, who knows?
That at one point has been published.
A lot of those people might have gone to a General Assembly class, set something up, messed around for an hour in the dev environment, and never picked it up again. Right?
Yeah.
So I just thought it was interesting. I don't know what the current numbers are for iOS developers. I want to say 18 million. Might be over 20. It was 15 a few years ago. I think part of it is that they just want to be able to say, hey, you know what? There is a developer ecosystem. I think the follow-up is like, how active is that? But there are people out there who know how to build on Alexa. And I would say in general, what we're going to talk about here is they are investing in this space.
Yep.
So the tooling, like they didn't have to consolidate tooling, right? They don't have to add some of these new features. So I wonder, I feel like this was all in play right along, right? I don't think this changed because of what Google did. but it almost feels like they're doubling down. They're like, and this is interesting because they're basically the only game in town if you're just a voice only developer, right? Okay, so Bixby's still out there, but they've really pulled back over the last 24 months. The evangelism they're doing for developers is much lower. They're really focused just on smart home. There's other stuff that you can do. And Alan, this will be great to see if this comes out because you are glitching like nobody's business. It's
I was wondering if you were seeing the video that I'm seeing. Yeah.
I think it's cool.
It's that Max Headroom vibe. I don't know.
Yeah, Max.
It wasn't working before you put that wasn't happening before you put the Google Glass on. So in any event, they're really doubling down. So one of the things that they're doing, so we'll talk about technical stuff, but they also announced a new rev share model, which I thought was really interesting, because just last December, I think it was, they said they're going to go 80-20 if you're under $1 million. So the standard split, everybody knows this in these ecosystems, is 70% to the developer, 30% to the toll taker, which happens to be the platform. There's a lot of going on in the iOS ecosystem around this, lawsuits, all these other things, changes. People are really thinking this through. They said, you know what, last fall, 80-20 if you're under $1 million in revenue. We want to help those small developers. Okay.
And that's aggregated revenue. So I'm assuming if you've got multiple skills at the most across those skills, then it's $1 million.
I think that's right. Are you telling me that that's right?
Well, I'm assuming because they said earn less than $1 million aggregate revenue.
Yes.
That's the wording that they use.
And it's developer, right? It's per developer.
Well, I mean, they did say skills making less than $1 million in revenue, but you may be right that they were just using skills as shorthand for the developer.
Well, there could be other ways that maybe skills make money. Well, in any event, that's something we should follow up on. But like this idea that the smaller ones, and then they said, yesterday they said, well, everyone's 80-20. It doesn't matter how big you are. But if you're small, it's 90-10. Because they're doing this 10% promo, and it's not clear that that's going to be permanent, but they're going to basically give you some sort of cash back benefit on that. So through 2022, that 10% is going to be paid out in cash, and I believe they said they're going to have promotional credits will be an option, but that's not going to be till next year. Promotional credits will be one of the ways you can buy ads. I don't know if that'd be better than cash, but so. More money. That's good.
Yeah, that is good. That they've said it a couple different times, and I kind of like worried a little bit about it when they said it was, but it was like that developers can make a living creating skills or something like that. And I was just like,
well, that's not necessarily true, but
yeah, I'm like, I think that's still optimistic. Some developers do.
Yeah.
But I don't know.
I suspect it's not so much about making a living as it is making it worth their while to spend the time and energy on learning on gaining the ability to make the skills to begin with.
Yeah.
Well, Alan, I mean, you spend a lot of time in an ecosystem that takes 30%, and
well, it's worse than that. It's an ecosystem that took 30%, if you could get that to work at all, and did not do revenue sharing at all. So this 70, 80, 90% that Google that Amazon is talking about right now, that's of some number that they're coming up with about how much they're willing to give out to users. There's this additional pot that's out there now that they're paying people with. That 70, 80, 90% was on in-skill purchases, which never really worked on the Google side.
Yeah, having developed for both, it's so much easier to include in-skill purchasing, subscriptions, consumables, one-time purchases, all inside of Alexa than it is with Google.
Right, and it's even harder now.
Well, I mean, in Europe, it's not possible because they killed the feature in Europe.
Yeah, that's
on the
true.
Google
Right.
side.
Well, so from a monetization standpoint, I don't think this really impacts a lot of folks. I mean, obviously anybody who's doing it, I believe it is a step in the direction of finally getting rid of rewards. and started targeting rewards more and more to people who actually earn revenue. But I also think that it's just in general, they're losing money on this. I think seems very clear. It's an investment. They want developers to feel good about being in the Alexa community. They want developers to become more active again, because I think we all know that developers are less active than they were a couple of years ago. And yeah, it seems to me like this is a step in the right direction. And then there's more tangible, tactical things that they mention as well.
Well, but
Yeah.
I think it's also important to note that, you know, some of the toolkit features that they've rolled out are definitely there to kind of say, hey, and if you get these metrics to a good value, you'll be getting more rewards. You know, so they're saying, if you produce high quality skills, we will reward you.
Right.
We will reward you for making high quality skills. And that, I think, you know, money goes a long way for people to make high quality skills.
Yep.
And that's not something we ever saw on the Google side.
Yeah. You're talking about the skill quality coach feature?
Or how the skill quality coach feature fits into the reward system specifically.
Well, hey, Mark, you looked at Skill Quality Coach. Why don't you break that down for us?
Yeah. So it's available right now in the US. I'm assuming they will be expanding to other places later this year or into next year. And it's just in the analytics console where you would see all your other analytics for your skill. Left-hand side, top, like second from the top, right under summary is the skill quality coach. And it shows you, it breaks everything down. I guess it evaluates your skill compared to things that it's learned by evaluating, you know, hundreds of thousands of other skills that are similar categories and whatnot. And it gives you a score between 1 and 5. Or 0 and 5, I guess, of how well your skill is doing, with 5 being the best. So like kind of being, you know, premier tiers are like 4 and 5. Both of the skills that I looked at last night with mine, one was in like 2.1 and the other one I think was in the upper 2s. But they actually have started doing this analysis back in the middle of June. So it's something where I haven't done anything different on my skill, but its score has changed a little bit over time, kind of still within that
okay.
band.
You had some in your graphing or the metrics. You had some data from last month.
Yeah, they started gathering the data from mid-June, and the numbers changed without me doing anything different. So kind of where my score, my skill rank, what score it got was, you know, changed without me.
It's not entirely algorithmic, by the way.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of Wizard of Oz thing going on. That was something that Eric and I talked to them about.
So, but it's and then as part of that, then there's a section where they give some recommendations, like you can do this, or this is something that we found in your skill, and skills that do this thing have seen like a 20% increase in retention or usage or something like that. And so
it's just another tool for them to say you need to do something for smart displays. Start using APL.
Yeah, well, and that's, you know, both of these skills have APL in them. So, but I'm assuming that would be one of the recommendations.
Yes.
The one I got in both of them was like, hey, you can do A/B testing and to test out features quicker. And I'm just like, well, you didn't tell me which feature to implement them to make my score better, but you did tell me that I could use A/B testing to do that. But thanks. One of them was something with fallback intent, and I'll have to take a look at that and see if that might actually be a valid one. On one of my skills. So
we need to get Tom Hewitson on here to talk about whether it's worth it to build for smart displays. Because he had some pointed views on that. Basically, it's a lot of extra work for no extra benefit. It might be a direct quote. It's pretty close.
But according to Amazon, then if you have screens, then, you know, it does better for skill engagement. I don't know. That's what we're told.
That's the ambient thing, right? It's the you know, it works on a smart speaker, it works on a smart display. It's like whatever you're using, there's some there's a version that works with that whatever device you're using.
I have a question about that metric, and I don't know if anybody knows this answer. Is that it works better than the average skill or than that skill? because there's going to be a skew in the data set. The people who invest in the visual representation using APL probably have invested more in the quality of the skill overall.
Yeah, I could see that.
We might just ask that question sometime and not get an answer. But
especially with the burden that it is to learn something totally new like APL.
Yes. Yeah. It's completely new. Okay, so skill coach, kind of interesting. The key thing there is they want you to make better skills. They really they focus on quality. They really they use that word many, many times. They also have this way to give you guys benefits as developers. And so that's good. I mean, I think in general, they're just trying to formalize that program. Let's see. Let's talk about what you could do if you get these credits. So they're going to pay cash this year, but eventually they're going to allow you to get credits. I don't know why you would take the cash instead of the credits. And maybe you have to have credits to buy the ads, but skill developers have been asking for a long time, since the beginning, how can I promote my skill within the Amazon Alexa ecosystem? And what they say,
you can do promoted. Yeah, you can do promoted skills.
Where?
On smart displays.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so this is not audio inside of your skill. Well, you've been able to advertise inside of a skill that you own, another skill that you own. You've been able to do that for a custom skill. But what this is as your Echo Show, what other size it is, the small Echo Show 5 all the way up to the big 15. It just cycles throughout the day through different things. Here's a news item. Here's a little tip. Here's a skill that you used recently. Here's whatever it is. And it's just kind of cycling through. You can have it cycle through photos that you have. But on that same canvas, you can pay for space that will show up a little promo for your skill. So it's a visual indicator that when you tap it, that you then go ahead and it starts the skill and gets going. So that is, as far as I know, the only canvas that you can, or only place that you can do promoted.
That's correct. Skills. That's correct for now. We asked them about audio. They said, "Oh yeah, maybe."
Yeah, but it's interesting. They're touting that you can create a campaign in less than 5 minutes. It's basically upload some images, fill out some forms, and pay your money, I'm assuming. And then, and I think you can even set like when a campaign starts and ends. Yep. And then it will just start showing up. I don't know. It'll be interesting, like what kind of demographics, if you can say, I want to focus it to people that are in Arizona, if it's like if the skills for a business that is in a specific location, or exactly what kind of demographics that you could be able to target the ad towards, or like people that generally play games, people that play action games, or
Well, so you've got interest level segmentation, which I'm not sure, but just zip, age, and gender. That's sort of the standard low level demographic that you start with is basic, and I don't know about that yet. And Eric, because I don't believe they mentioned.
No, they left it at the moment at least pretty vague about how they target the ads or what they're doing. I mean, Amazon has enough data that they could make the advertising as specific as they want, essentially. But I wouldn't be surprised if it turns out there's tiers of payment based on not only like the duration of the ad, but like how much how specific you make the targeting. I mean, I feel like you're going to see. I mean, I honestly don't know how many like independent voice app developers or skills are going to be promoted there, but I'm sure that some of the bigger brands with an Alexa skill will be using it a lot, especially for sales or special deals and events that they're running.
I mean, that's basically what Tom Hewitson said. We bring in, 2 call-outs to Tom Hewitson and one
He knows what he's talking about.
But that's what he said in the VoiceBot Discord chat when we were doing the real time discussion. He's like, yeah, that sort of ruined it in mobile because the independence. It was more about like how much capital you had in order to pump your app in mobile than it was like the quality. So you could have high quality, but if you didn't have capital to buy the app install ads, you were not getting on the charts, which meant you weren't getting a lot of users.
Right. And in this case, it also means that you're not going to be getting the credits to get more ads. So it becomes a feedback loop.
Oh, yeah. Good point.
The more successful you are, the more you will be able to advertise, and thus the more successful you will be.
And it could turn into a demotivator for developers to, like if I can't really get on the ad,
Yeah, well, and it gives,
get on
bigger
the screen,
brands.
then,
Well, and it gives the bigger brands a way to leverage like partnerships. If I can't think of a good example, but like if there were an Alexa skill equivalent to like Wordle that went viral, I'm sure there's plenty of big brands that would be eager to do a promotional deal where they pay for advertising the viral Alexa skill, sponsored by whatever larger company is working with them.
that would be interesting because if you could have ad campaigns sponsored by other entities and that information could get passed to the skill when it starts up, it was like, welcome to Wordle sponsored by Jaguar.
Yeah.
Jaguar comes back up. Perfect. 100,000 cars. All right.
200,000.
Yeah. Sorry. Okay. So any thoughts on the ad side there, Alan?
Just that I think it's interesting that a certain extremely well-known advertising company didn't do that first.
Oh. I wonder who that would be. Yes, I wonder. Well, actually, you know what? A certain well-known advertising company is now Amazon because it is killing it with ads. And this is a perfect example of adopting the model that they already had for Amazon.com for the online retail business, where in order to juice your sales, which helps juice your search prominence, which helps juice your sales.
You pay for the ad on Amazon.com. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's not exactly pay to play for sure. There's other things that go in there, but it helps. There's a model. Everybody's played that model who's worked in that space. I've seen it up close and personal. So I think that this is really interesting. And I thought it was really funny. I can't remember the executive's name off the top of my head, but he's the head of the Alexa developer group. He's just like, and my favorite new feature is ads. It's like his favorite thing was the thing that developers pay Amazon money for. I love
Cha-ching! His eyes turn into dollar signs. That's my favorite feature.
Whereas Jeff Blankenberg, his favorite feature was more money to developers.
Was developers.
Oh yeah, I've heard that once or twice before. That's going way back, Mr. Ballmer.
That is.
Hopefully nobody's going to be sweating as much as he was during that presentation. That's a very obscure reference for most of the people watching today. Okay. They had some other things that they were focused on, retention, but I don't think they have a lot of new ideas in retention. So they do have some things around routines. So there's like a new SDK, I think, for it.
Alexa Routines Kit. Just a quick summary of that is that you can create, as a skill developer, you can create routines, and then you can surface those routines as part of a skill so that then you could suggest, would you like to incorporate this as part of your morning routine? And you could say yes, and then it actually adds that routine to your phone as if you had typed it in as part of the Alexa app.
It's basically instant.
Yeah.
And a lot of people aren't using routines because is it like a civilian user? It's like, what's a routine? How do I access routines?
It's like creating an if this, then that, but you have to, it's kind of like, it's a power user, I would think.
I think one of the great things that this will do is not just for the morning routine part, but it also ends up becoming a way to set up aliases almost.
Yeah.
So that instead of having to say, do this with this skill, it's creating those kind of, it's more like a shortcut in a lot of ways.
Yes. Everyone's
And-
going to shortcuts.
And offering those shortcuts, I think, is going to be really powerful when,
Yeah.
as developers start to get their heads wrapped around this notion. Developers and designers are really going to want to get shortcuts for phrases that users want out there.
Yeah, that's not happening though. I mean, like name free intents don't even really get you that. You don't get a phrase.
Well, but it's not name free intents. It's a routine with a name.
Yeah, so you can have a routine triggered by a phrase, any phrase that you pick,
Oh, I see what you're saying.
and then
So
that could
you
execute
just have
a.
to plant the phrase, basically.
Yes.
Sure. I mean, it will be, and this is actually a feature that Google's also sort of kind of doing, is saying, would you like to be able to, hey, you've just ordered a pizza. Would you like to order this same pizza in the future just by saying, order my usual pizza?
Right. Yeah.
And it then creates a routine with that name that does the ordering.
But it's not exclusive.
I don't know.
You can
Yeah,
swap
we'll
it
have
out.
to see. We'll have to see, like if some other skill also has the order my pizza. Do they
Well,
have
I-
two? Do they
let's say
override
you've got
one? Do they?
two pizza skills, right? One of
Yeah.
them has an order my pizza skill, right? Or routine. There's nothing I think that would preclude another pizza skill for having the exact same order my pizza skill. It's just then Alexa has to figure out which one
Yeah.
is active. And I would guess it's most recent.
Well, it's also Alexa has that teachable AI thing where it's like if you use a specific skill or use a more generic term with a specific skill, it will say like, oh, do you want me to remember that this is what the pizza skill that you prefer to use? And if you say yes, then that's what it'll use automatically next time you mention pizza.
I would
but
like
again,
to think that they're ready for that, but I don't know that they are. Go ahead,
Yeah.
Alan.
No, I was just going to say, this is a routine which plays, changes a lot of the rules about how we engage skills.
Yep.
And
Yeah.
I think it's going to take some experimentation till we figure out, A, how to use it, and then B, how to exploit it. And
Yeah. And they're really
For the
into-
user's benefit.
So Amazon was really stressing developers, why don't you make things that people do every day? And then you can turn it into a routine and then they'll use it every day. And then won't you be successful as an Alexa developer? Whether you can do these everyday routines and turn them into some subscription monetization is a completely different question.
Yeah.
But I think that in general is right, because if Amazon can do this themselves with first party, or any third party developer can do this, the more things that become everyday routines that they're using through an Alexa ecosystem is good for Amazon, and it's good for whoever skill builder is offering that.
Yep.
Notifications. They had a little bit about notifications. I don't know if either of you want to, or any of you want to comment on that.
Nope.
I didn't remember anything new, to be honest, but
I thought it was like, well, they're slightly
The-
slightly more permissive, because you can basically, I thought you could now ask people if they want to be notified, and then you get in the notification queue that way. You can prompt them to enable notifications.
okay.
And if that's wrong, someone can in the comments correct me, but I'm pretty sure that's correct. We didn't talk about Alexa Shopping Kit. So that's another way to make money. And this is not actually new. This was announced last year. And this is the opportunity for you to sell your own products that are also that someone can order through Amazon Shopping, right? So it has to be within the Amazon ecosystem.
Well, and it's any product on Amazon that has an ASIN. So
yes, exactly. And so this is interesting. And if it's not your product, you can get an affiliate fee for it.
yeah, I think so. So what I understand is available right now is add to cart or buy now.
Yes.
And I think I think add to cart is easy. It just does it, and you can do that inside of the skill. But you're kind of in charge of surfacing like what things you could buy that were physical goods. if you do buy now, I think I think there's a little bit more to it. You had to have set up a PIN, and there's a number of different things I think that you have to set up, and you have to have actually,
You can get
one-click
stuck.
purchasing on the Amazon side of things. But
I was going to say having a PIN is pretty funny considering Amazon were the ones who created the one-click purchase.
Yeah.
yeah,
That's pretty funny.
that is pretty funny.
They used to have one click through Alexa, but then people's kids started ordering a bunch of stuff.
Yeah, that's true. Sometimes they're parrots accidentally. No, I don't know
Yeah,
if that's
maybe.
true or not. That's
Maybe.
a story. But so coming later this year is add to wish list. So you create your wish list. So that's something. And then they're saying that the Amazon Associates on Alexa is later this year as well. So I think that's where you could have products that aren't yours, kind of in this link, and link together. And then if one of those is purchased through your skill, then you get some additional, like
It's
10% or something.
up to 10%, but it actually it depends on product category. Most of them are somewhere between 2 and 5%, but there are a couple of categories that are 10%. So, but that's good. I mean, I've talked to some people who are part of the alpha, essentially, because we were in a public beta. I guess it was the private beta, and the conversion rates are actually higher than what you'd see in mobile. So they were pretty happy with it. No one's doing enough volume to be really meaningful because there's not enough users to be really meaningful. But it's a good idea.
Oh, sure. This is a feature that a friend of mine calls the gift shop feature, because it basically means that just about every game on Alexa and just about every brand and tons and tons of non-game, just interactive stuff is going to say, hey, do you want a t-shirt? Here's where you buy our logo t-shirt. And it gets fulfilled through Amazon. And that's
game merch. That's actually brilliant. I hadn't really thought about that. That's a really good idea.
Yeah. Though right now t-shirts is on the list of things that can't be purchased. I think what they're wanting to do is there's a list of exclusions. And I think part of it is they don't want to get in a conversation like, well, what size do you want? What color shirt do you want? They don't want to have a whole conversation. They just want to say, I'm adding this item, or you're buying this item, done, we're moving on.
Alexa conversation should solve all
that. Kind of the last thing that we kind of talked a lot about, like money things. There's Alexa skill deals so that you can actually, as a developer, discount the price of your skill or your subscription for a certain amount of time, and have that just being in control. Inside the Alexa Developer Console, you can say,
is that
during this promo period, then it can go down. What?
Is that available to now?
I haven't seen it yet.
I think it's coming later this year, but it's a really good idea. And I believe that one is available. It's going to be available globally too. I don't think that's limited to the US.
Yeah. So you can say here's the holiday promo for the next 30 days. You can get this I think they say that you have to do at least 20% off or something like that before. So.
Alan's so old school. He even it's like, I think he actually has an old phone on the wall there. It's ringing.
it's the rotary dial phone on the wall now.
So that was pretty interesting. Okay, so we've run a long time already. We haven't talked about everything because they had a lot of announcements. I do direct people to voicebot.ai. Eric has written several articles. I've done one or two on this, so you can find out a lot more information. But before we leave, what we should do is we should talk about what we didn't talk about, or what they didn't talk about at Alexa. Or this is your opportunity. You could say what they didn't talk about, or one other thing that they said that you think we should make sure the people watching today find out about. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, I would say, check out voicebot.ai. You'll see we covered quite a lot more of the multiple voice assistant elements, especially, I think, is something Amazon's excited about, and I think people will. I think it's going to insinuate itself into the Amazon ecosystem. So I'm excited to see how people start just using more voice assistants than they realize because of Amazon, because of Alexa's flexibility in that way.
All right, Alan.
I think the interesting thing we haven't talked about that we're going to see a lot more about is the Alexa for Mobile SDK. That was an interesting sideswipe at a certain other company that released their own operating system. It's going to be interesting to see how that plays out over the next year between the two, between Amazon and Google.
Okay, well, like elaborate.
Basically, I mean, as we talked about last time, Google has pulled back what their assistant is doing, and they're kind of focusing on the assistant on Android to be able to launch apps.
Yes.
And when it launches an app, it takes you into a screen, and that's it. There's
or launch a feature within an app. To be fair.
or launch a feature in an app,
Deep
which
link.
is taking you onto a screen.
Yeah.
But
One-way deep link. Yeah.
What they, there are some additional things there. It's, sometimes you can get a widget that will show up in the assistant, but
Yes.
mostly they're pushing this notion of you're launching the app and you're going into the app. And Amazon just came out and said, yeah, we've got two-way conversations inside your app. We're not, and they
Yes.
specifically said, we're not just deep linking you to a screen. So that was a pretty bold swipe there.
And do you think that part of the reason they can say that is not just the SDK, but because even if it's not because they have Alexa custom assistant, let's just put it on the table, because they actually have a solution that's designed for other people to customize a voice experience within another environment.
I don't know what it is, to be honest. I don't know how much of that it's using Alexa custom assistant. I don't know how much of that is just leveraging the Alexa API. But it's not like Google didn't have that either.
Yeah, well, Google doesn't have that. Definitely doesn't have that right now. I don't know, Mark, you're angling to get in here.
Yeah, I think my take is I think it has nothing to do with the Alexa custom assistant, actually, because everything that I saw was a little Alexa pop-up at the bottom of your app that then you could talk to. So I think it's an Alexa widget that you put inside of your mobile app, and that
they demoed that with TikTok. When was that? 2 years ago, Eric?
Yeah, 2 years.
So, but I think that predated Alexa custom assistant. I think it's the same tech. I think it's the same stack. That in order to do what they were doing in the SDK for TikTok or for any mobile app provider was essentially the same thing that they had to do to create custom assistant, because you're just abstracting it and you're allowing people to run it in a different environment.
Yeah, it'll be interesting because I've kind of had an inside look at a custom assistant, and it's not.
And you're saying I'm wrong.
I'm reserving judgment until I get more information.
Well, you're an Alexa champion. You probably have the hotline.
Well, it was more through work than it was through Alexa Champions.
Okay, fair enough. Oh yeah, because Rain, obviously, building custom assistants for deskless workers, member of the Voice Interoperability Initiative. You're in. You're in like Lynn.
We're definitely looking at custom assistants in a bigger way. Definitely.
Okay, cool. All right, what do you have? That's something you'd like to point out, or that they talked about, or they didn't talk about?
Okay, so I'll do one of each really quickly. So one thing that they did talk about that we need to check out more is voice forward account linking. Before it was only login with Amazon, and now you can use custom OAuth providers.
Yes.
So that will be interesting. What my understanding is that you will not have to go to your Alexa app to do the account linking. It's voice forward. But I think there's still going to be send a code to your phone, and then you're going to have to speak the phone.
The demo showed a pin sent to your phone. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, but that is so much better than account linking. So.
Well, I would just say, okay, fine. But I'd say the voice forward account linking was very painful to watch. It looked like, because of the use case, it's like the guy's like, turn on sleep sounds. Like he wants to take a nap. And then it's like, would you like to do an account link so I don't have to bother you again? Oh, sure. And then it was like 5 routines later, he was done. And then he was on.
But I think hopefully if it's like account linking is that you only have to do it once. So
that is absolutely true. But that guy lost his opportunity to have a nap.
Yeah,
I felt bad for him.
But his next nap is going to be better.
I just have a feeling that if they would do it more like Slack does the magic links, it would be better. And they just say, "You want this? pop a magic link up is an SMS to you. You hit it, you just 2 taps, you're done. Why have a conversation about that? That is a
Yeah.
perfect example.
If you're already sending something to the phone, then why don't you just send a link that would go in? So the thing that they didn't talk about that in the past, with the Echo Show 15, there's the concept of widgets, and there hasn't been anything talked about widgets in this one. So
Yeah.
that will be interesting to see what happens with that coming
Alan
year.
doesn't care about widgets.
All right, no, I think it depends. I'm more interested in the output form of widgets than the input form of widgets.
You're a widget zealot, from what I can tell. You love widgets. Okay, this has been fun. I'll throw out one more thing. Contest for senior living communities, $45,000 purse. This is the first time we've seen this type of contest. In fact, it's the first time we've seen a contest in quite a while, I think. I can't remember the last. I mean, obviously, there's
a non-academic one.
Yeah, exactly. The university research ones are out there, and those are big purses. But this was great. I'm really happy to see them getting back into the independent developer community, doing this contest, doing some things for seniors. Like, obviously, this is a push. We saw them roll out some new features last fall, really targeting seniors that are at home, or just it could be anybody that benefits from remote care while they're at home. And I think this will be really interesting. You know, our friend Heidi Culbertson's over there. I don't know if this started before she got there, but we'll give her credit for it. Great job, Heidi.
This is her baby. So
okay, great. I think this is really great, and I'll be really fascinated to see what comes out there, because I do believe this has been an underinvested area. So there's some first party things. There were some third parties who are trying to do very elaborate solutions that haven't really gotten off the ground. I think it'd be great to see some independents do some of these everyday activities that they might be able to help some folks in, and really having a nice target user base to go after.
Yeah, and this could be, this is 55 plus, so it could be the, homebound or active adults, I think, are both on the table for this competition.
Absolutely. And I think I'm actually looking for the active adult piece. I think that's going to be really interesting what people come up with. And if that in fact looks like something different than you would do for someone who's 35, maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. But you might be incentivized, a little pro tip, to target it at 55 plus, because you got the contest. But I bet if there's anything good in there, Amazon is going to be pushing it at every one of their events.
Well, and I think that's exactly why they did this. Is 45,000. It's not a massive amount, but it's just enough to get people to notice it, to maybe get a little bit of seed capital to actually say, do people really want this? And with Amazon's push to say, yeah, people really want this. I can make a real company out of this.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. I think we're going to call it a day. I thought we were going to do 40 minutes. That's ridiculous. Okay. Probably me. Mark Tucker, how can people keep track of you, find out more about what's going on?
Mostly on Twitter, Mark Tucker, and I'm there, posting stuff, sharing things, any level of thing from open source to other things that I'm doing. So that's probably the best way to contact me.
Great. Alan Furstenberg.
Can find me on Twitter at @Furstenberg or on LinkedIn as Alan Furstenberg. And I usually try to post most of my technical stuff on Twitter.
Right. And you run office hours, twice a week?
I do run office hours 3 times a week, every Wednesday at 6 a.m., noon, and 6 p.m. Eastern time. And again, I post all of those on Twitter, and that's usually a place where people can come and ask. Voice development questions was the original focus, but kind of the purpose is to gather a small group of people together. And if you've got voice development or just general voice questions, that's a great place for it.
Yeah. Super. And you guys also are the 2 voice devs. So check that out on YouTube and the podcast landscape. Eric Schwartz, how can they find you?
Yes, you can find all my stories on voicebot.ai, and you can also follow me on Twitter at Eric H. Schwartz, and follow at voicebot.ai for our stories and other insights about Alexa, all the stuff that we didn't get to today that we discussed yesterday. And you can learn for yourself what the age of self is, and Brett's opinion on it.
Yeah, the Age of Self. We didn't talk about that. That was an announcement or messaging at the Alexa Live, but we thought we wouldn't ridicule the marketing department. Okay, I'm Brett Kinsella, a host of the VoiceBot podcast. As you know, you can find me on the Twitter at Brett Kinsella. And I would like for those of you who are watching this on YouTube, please like and subscribe to the channel. We're doing a lot of really fun, interesting things right now in the video space. And you know what? YouTube's mysterious algorithm really likes if someone subscribes and likes. In particular, just subscribe. So that's what that would be my call to action to you. Read voicebot.ai for sure. But I think that's it until next week. Thanks a lot, guys.
Thank you.
Thanks, Brett.